reminiscible here. So serious talk, but I haven't talked about this before because it's a new idea for me. So it might be erratic and full of tangents in me trying to convey myself. So, background. Actually, let's just jump in. My thesis, my hypothesis is that. Actually, trigger warning. We'll get to the hypothesis later. So, background raised Gnostic, not agnostic, but Gnostic, which is ooh, basically that the cardinal sins are these like just think the Celestine prophecy and the cardinal sins are like trying to suck your soul's energy and like lust is the forerunner of all sin and everybody has their own set of cardinal sins kind of like okay, cross like the Celestine prophecy with Dante's Inferno and you have like the Gnosticism ideology that I grew up with. Okay, like literally Dante's Inferno plus the Celestine prophecy. So vibrations are good and sin is bad. Okay, and bad habits are like offshoots of sin, and all cardinal sins are offshoots of lust, and that like celibacy must be enforced unless both people are edging each other. Otherwise, you are creating bad habits, which lead to you being reincarnated again and again and again and again until you can reach nirvana or the divinity, or you in which is like higher dimensional and like it's like the dimension after lucid dreaming. It's like there's the reality and then there's the three-dimensional world and then there which is kind of funny because the universe is two-dimensional, but so there's the three-dimensional world and then there's lucid dreaming, which is the fourth dimension, and then fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. The more vibration, the better your vibration, the higher up in dimensions you can go. um, so like Lobson Rampa talks about vibrations in terms of like higher dimensions. Okay, so you take Dante's Inferno, you take the Celestine Prophecy, and you take Lobson Rampa. You teach a child those things as absolute truths from birth, and you have my ideology up till I turned 21, basically. Ah. Now my hypothesis is, I believe maybe I assert that maybe likely belief in God stems from our need to cope with meaninglessness. We postulate that there is a God so we do not feel completely valueless, so that we can avert the confronting the idea that our existence is meaningless. But rather than a logical solution, that's a emotional solution, whether it's simulation theory or benevolent God idea or the just world hypothesis, along which with whatever panentheist ideas you have, or any combination of the three, including whatever mythology you want to believe in or were indoctrinated with. Okay? Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, um, Sikh, I, J- J- Judaism, Jainism. I mean, there's like a spectrum of like God created everything and is directly responsible for the creation of all evil and of all suffering, but that suffering was caused by the evil which God is directly responsible for creating, but God knew all of this would happen, so he's just toying with us. But it's all for the greater good because never question God. There's like that end of the spectrum, and then there's like there's Like, there's that end of the spectrum, and then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is like the world is unjust and the universe is God. But like when you start putting like, okay, but the universe is intelligent and the universe is benevolent, then you get these contradictions. And with Gnosticism, it was like, so I'm atheist, not agnostic, agnostic. Okay, basically, you need to define what God you're talking about. Otherwise, it's just a meaningless conversation. Once you've defined your God, I can say I'm a hard atheist or I'm agnostic towards that definition of God. Because there are multiple gods, multiple beliefs in God, I mean. So someone who believes in Christianity is probably atheist, hard atheist towards Thor and Pharaoh, etc. So any Pharaoh, pick one. Atheist towards each of them. Atheist towards Kim Jong Il. So, um, the godlike definition of Kim Jong Il. Anyways, um, I hope I didn't trigger too much correcting myself. So in Gnosticism, we have this mission that we're all like descended from heaven to battle the sin from like the fallen angels. You know how there's like giants in the Bible and like fallen angels breed with humans to create these giants who are like really angsty and violent. So like everybody is like create their soul is created by like a divine mother and a divine father in like the fifth or greater dimension of like vibrational energy type dimension, and it's like each higher dimension encompasses all the lower ones, and you can perceive all the lower ones when you're in a higher dimension, but you can't perceive the higher ones when you're in a lower one, which is why you can't see them. And then so you like need to raise your consciousness. But the fallen angels is like we are the fallen angels from higher dimensions who have like descended into earth, but the pleasures of the flesh were too great, and then more angels came to try and rescue those angels who became humans and entered like the wheel of samsara, which is like constant reincarnation until you either ascend or you like descend into like becoming a worm, becoming a pig, or what was it? It's like according to your greed. So like gluttons become pigs. Um, appet or like violent people become like dogs, like slutty people. Just sorry, lustful people become like I don't know monkeys, and then like worms, and then you become like different insect depending on your main sin, and then those insects become rocks, and you like and then after like no vegetables and then rocks, and then once you're like a rock. So like coal is like an evil rock, but then like once all of your sin is wiped away by like not organisming as a rock, then the sins die off and it's just your pure soul, and then you reincarnate, but you like lose your memory, and then you like reincarnate as a good rock, like a gem, and better gem, and then like better animal, and then like whatever, like dolphin, cat, human, or something like that. But this completely ignores like animal cruelty and animal suffering. And it's basically like the contradiction is like, okay, if the wolf eats the deer, then what did the deer do to deserve that? And how is the deer suffering for the greater good? Um, if the human eats the wolf, how, how is how is that for the greater good? If you're eating an herbivore, how is that for the greater good if the herbivore is on the like rising end of the reincarnation cycle? Or it's like there's the human cycle and there's like the animal, vegetation, rock cycle. So when I'm watching this movie, Rebellion story, I'm thinking like, well, what if there's a Type 3 civilization and like it's like Kyuubi type, like, I don't know, like um post-human, you guys won't get the references. Like basically every sci-fi where there's like this benevolent um technologically advanced like robot civilization which is like benevolent towards everybody and like is trying to optimize for the greater good and least suffering. Um, but like a Type 3 civilization which can like harness the power of galaxies. And what if those guys like got the Jovian disease from EVE Online, where it's just like it's where basically the Jovian disease is like when C bots chat on Twitch, how the bots like go into loops, and like if they're not trying to be human, then like the programming directive for the bot to act human makes it go. And when you don't have a directive, when you don't have emotions, you just your train of thought doesn't have the stimuli to keep going. You just like arrive at a conclusion, and then that's good enough, and you stop functioning. Like you terminate the process because the emotions are maybe what keep us going. So what if this Type 3 like immortal godlike to us civilization, maybe even a different universe simulating our universe, just like a computer can simulate AI, maybe some extra universal Turing machine programmed black hole with infinite processing power compared to basically a processor powerful enough or with a clock speed low enough, or I mean a time lapse low enough to process our entire universe, even if the outer universe moves at a different time scale relative to ours, you would still have. I feel like I'm confusing a lot of people. Okay, let's say if you have enough processing time and infinite processing power, you could simulate this universe. Then what if that like civilization is using us for like amusement or immersion to like feel our emotions or witness our emotions or observe our emotions because it's emotions and irrational like conflicts which are what keep these hyper intelligent people going, keeping them from burning out or arriving at a satisfactory conclusion and then just dying by apathy. Like Jovian disease, you fulfill your life's purpose and then you're done. You just there's no reason to continue thinking or doing anything because you just you've you've achieved your goal. Q equals one. Your the way your brain was constructed, you achieved what you wanted. Now you're content with that, and you've achieved the optimal state, and so now there's nothing else to do. What if they like created this universe to like to simulate emotion, to have some sort of amusement or purpose? We think purpose comes from God, but what if the gods think that purpose comes from irrational emotional conflict? Just like Kyuubi wants to avert heat death by harnessing the irrational emotional pain of magical girls. But this entire line of questioning, as you can see, stems directly from the beliefs I was indoctrinated it with, stems directly from the need to avoid confronting my own existential worthlessness, right? Because when you get dumped or when you get bad marks or when you get spurned by parental figures or friends or people you wanted to please, when you fail to meet their expectations, well, I'm a people pleaser. I want people to acknowledge me. And so when I can't do that, then I feel more worthless. And so believing in a higher purpose is this emotion, is this just like instinctive defense mechanism against feeling self-conflicted? Instead of self-analysis, instead of reasoning, okay, well, what is the conflict here? Why do I feel worthless? What do I need in order to find meaningful goals, in order to perceive reality objectively, in order to make better decisions, in order to not repeat the same failure that I just did? What can I do to have a more accurate outlook on life? Instead of asking ourselves these questions, we just fantasize and dream and imagine godlike figures who unconditionally give us meaning in life. And that's stupid. So this whole line of thought, it's just a stupid human idiosyncrasy which we have as a result of natural selection, because the people who did get depressed asking these questions were slightly less seductive for their mates, were slightly less happy, were slightly more depressed, and were slightly less likely to successfully produce offspring and pass on those genetic traits which allow us to question ourselves when we are hypocritical and self-contradictory. And so now, humans, when we are self-contradictory, we cling onto false notions of benevolent deities and all-powerful entities that have given us purpose for their own amusement. But wouldn't it be better to live in a world where you are free, where you are the observer of the universe, where you're free to decide your own purpose, where you are free to decide what your meaning in life is and what you want to achieve, rather than having it handed down to you by a divine entity which created you for its sole amusement? So figure out what you like and don't like, and figure out how to respect other people's rights to achieve what they like and achieve what they don't like. And if that means tolerating make-believe religion, then go for it. But if that conflicts with your ideals of how people ought to be treated, then figure out a way to create a world where your ideals are prioritized by everyone.